This is what the club have had to say in a statement. Chelsea Football Club and head coach Enzo Maresca have parted company. During his time at the club, Enzo led the team to success in the UEFA Conference League and the FIFA Club World Cup. Those achievements will remain an important part of the club's recent history, and we thank him for his contributions to the club. It continues by saying the key objectives still to play for across 4 competitions, including qualification for the Champions League football. Enzo and the club believe a change gives the team the best chance of getting the season back on track. We wish Enzo well for the future. Right, so Kaveh Solhekol has been all over this story, and we've talked about what's happened and what's led to this, but we know that Enzo Maresca wasn't happy. He made it very, very clear he wasn't happy. How much of his unhappiness was down to owner interference?
I think this is a little bit of an urban myth. People think that Chelsea's football leadership team go into the dressing room after every game to sort of, get a debrief from Enzo Maresca and interfere in how he's running the team. I think what they do is the football leadership team go in the dressing room to show support to him and the players. So I think that is a bit of a red herring. The main reasons that Enzo Maresca is leaving Chelsea today is one, results. Results simply haven't been good enough over the past couple of weeks. The second main reason is disagreements about return to play protocols for injured players. Chelsea, like every Premier League club, like every club, have a medical department. They are independent. They are the ones who decide when a player can return to play after injury.
Is that normal, though? Because I've never heard that before. OK, the medical team are there to advise, but I would have thought that ultimately the head coach decides.
Not at all.
Because the players always say, if you speak to ex-players, they always say, we know our own bodies.
Yeah, but the way it works at Chelsea is the medical team is independent and they're the ones who have the final say. The Chelsea head coach is never going to overrule the medical department. And also, I think, the fact that Enzo Maresca has recently been linked with other clubs, and this has coincided with a dip in performances and results, has just added to the feeling that there's too much volatility at the club. Look, the structure of Chelsea is not going to change. They're going to make a new appointment. A new head coach is going to come in a matter of days. And whoever that person is going to have to work in the same way as Enzo Maresca was happy to work when he accepted the job in the summer of 2024.
But that's a good point. If he was happy to do it and then wanted to change it when actually they have had success, you've got to kind of say, well, to the manager, head coach, sorry, what was your problem? At the same time, if it's believed it's not working, why does the structure say the same? We have a lot of Chelsea fans on the show, and they say that they're not happy with the structure ahead of the head coach. We've heard Graham Potter wasn't happy with it. We heard Mauricio Pochettino wasn't happy with it. We now know Enzo Maresca wasn't happy about it. So do they need to change something up there? You say they're not going to, but should they?
They're not going to change that. That is not going to change. The people who own Chelsea own the club, and they put a structure in place. They believe it's a modern structure similar to the structure that you see at a lot of other big clubs around the world. And the head coach is the head coach, and he has to fit into that structure. I think there are specific reasons why Enzo Maresca is leaving Chelsea. I know that it's easy from the outside to say, oh, it's because the owners have been interfering. It's because he doesn't get enough of a say in transfers. I don't think it's as complicated as that. Yes, I think there were issues. Yes, I think Enzo Maresca feels that a red line had been crossed. He felt that his position was untenable. He felt perhaps that he'd been undermined. That is why he was ready to leave Chelsea. But just because Enzo Maresca felt that he couldn't work under those conditions doesn't mean that there are not a lot of other head coaches who would want to work under those conditions.
We'll get to that in a moment, the next head coach. But do you think he wasn't happy with, you mentioned transfers there, do you think he wanted more of a say? Well, every head coach who is called a head coach normally accepts they're not a manager. It's going to be left to a recruitment team. But when they've got their feet under the table and been there for a while, they want more of a say in transfers. Whether that's fair or not, that's for other people to debate. But do you think he thinks, I've been there for a while, I should have a say in who we sign, or more of a say?
So you say, did the success go to his head because they won some trophies and they got back in the Champions League? He wanted more say in transfers. Well, look, judging by what he said in a news conference at the start of this season, when he said that he felt that the club had to sign a new centre-back because Levi Colwill was going to miss most of the season, perhaps you're right. But Enzo Maresca was involved in all the decisions when it came to signings at Chelsea. And modern head coaches know that they're not going to have the final say unless you are really, one of the best managers, head coaches in the world. You're not going to have that power. You're not going to have that autonomy. Enzo Maresca didn't have the final say, but he was involved in all the decisions as well. So yes, I understand there may have been, some disagreements behind the scenes. There certainly were about buying a new centre-back. But look at it from Chelsea's perspective. Who could they have signed? Liverpool tried to sign a new centre-back in the summer as well. They signed a young Italian centre-back who is now injured. They tried to sign Mark Gahey as well. They didn't manage to do that. So it's well and good saying from the outside, Chelsea need to do this, Chelsea need to do that. It's not always as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, definitely true. In terms of the next head coach, you said before the break that Liam Rossini is one of a handful of head coaches who could come in, and you said that they want a permanent appointment not till the end of the season. I'll just read you through what the bookies are saying at the moment. Sometimes they've got an idea, sometimes they don't. But Rossini is actually the favourite, maybe because we've been saying that. But there's also Oliver Glasner, who's out of contract at the end of the season. Andoni Iraiola's on there. But before that, actually Cesc Fabregas is joint second favourite now with Oliver Glasner, and used to play for Chelsea. Then you've got Xavi. You've also got Marco Silva's on there as well, out of contract at the end of the season too. And then you've got like John Terry, former player, etc., and Roberto De Zerbi, who's doing well at Marseille. But Rossini is the one that we know about. But just recap to everybody that it's going to be a full-time appointment, not an interim.
Yeah, I think, look, Liam Rossini at the moment is manager, head coach of Strasbourg. Now, Strasbourg owned by the same ownership group who own Chelsea. So you would imagine it wouldn't be a very complicated appointment to make. One thing that would complicate it in the short term is that Strasbourg are returning from their winter break on Saturday, and they've got an important game against Nice. I don't think Chelsea will make a permanent appointment in time for the game against Manchester City, but I expect them to make a permanent appointment in the next few days. So maybe the early part of next week. And I've been trying to pin down how many candidates we're talking about. I was told it's a handful. It's a small handful. I think you're talking about 2, 3, 4 possible candidates who could take over from Maresca. And this is something that Chelsea are prepared for. They have a contingency plan. They have already vetted a short list of candidates. So if you're a Chelsea supporter, you're not going to have to wait long to find out who is going to take over permanently. Just going back to Maresca, it just leaves a little bit of a bad taste in the mouth, because I remember being in New York in the summer when Chelsea became world champions. I know the FIFA Club World Cup is not a very popular tournament. It was derided by a lot of fans. But if you were there, that was a great achievement by Enzo Maresca. And if you'd said to me fast forward a few months into the future, and you'll be standing with Tom White and talking about the fact that Enzo Maresca has left Chelsea, in normal circumstances, I would have said, I don't believe you. I cannot see that happening. He's got them back in the Champions League. He's won a European trophy. He's won the Club World Cup. But this is Chelsea we're talking about. There's always something happening at Chelsea. And I think the owners want to get away from that. They want to get away from this volatility the whole time. They want to get somebody in, a head coach, who's going to coach the team and is going to buy into the way they want the club to be run, and somebody who is not going to go off script. Having said all that about Enzo Maresca, I think he'll be back, and he'll be back soon. He's already been linked with the Juventus job. He was linked with the Manchester City job, if that ever becomes available. Pep Guardiola has made it clear that he's not leaving. He's got a contract until 2027. But Enzo Maresca is now represented by Jorge Mendes. So he's not going to have any trouble finding a new job. And also, he's in very, very good company when it comes to managers who've lost their job at Chelsea. Think back to Jose Mourinho. Think back to Antonio Conte. Think back to Carlo Ancelotti. Think
Thomas
back
Tuchel.
to Thomas Tuchel as well. Losing your job at Chelsea doesn't mean you're a bad manager, doesn't mean you're a bad head coach. It really goes with the territory. And these guys know what to expect when they sign on the dotted line to manage Chelsea.
Yeah, one final point to make, actually. Whoever comes in, I remember when Ange Postecoglou took the Nottingham Forest job, it was like there was game after game after game after game, and everyone who's been involved in the game said he hadn't had time to get his philosophy, if you want to call that, across on the training pitch, because it was constantly game after game. He wasn't getting any training time. Have you seen Chelsea's fixture schedule? In January, from Sunday until the end of the month, so 27 days, they've got 9 games, right? Now, no one's going to be in charge for Manchester City, it doesn't sound like anyway. Then in a few days' time, it's Fulham away in the Premier League as well before the FA Cup comes in. It's going to be the same issue. Whoever it is isn't going to get a lot of time on that training pitch, are they? And then it's going to be a baptism of fire.
Yeah, they've got 9 games in 4 competitions. Let's deal with the Premier League first. Whoever comes in is not expected to win the Premier League. Nobody at Chelsea is expecting to challenge for the title this season. They need to finish in the top 5 to make sure they finish in the Champions League places and qualify for that again next season. When it comes to their 2 Champions League games in January, Paphos, Napoli away. OK, if they win both those games, that would mean that they would avoid the playoff round in the Champions League. But even if they don't win those 2 games, it's still highly, highly likely that Chelsea are going to get into the knockout stages of the Champions League. Their game against Arsenal, that's the first leg of the League Cup semi-final. That is not a priority trophy for Chelsea. Yes, if they win it, great. But if they get knocked out of that by Arsenal, it's not the end of the world. They've also got another London derby against Charlton in the FA Cup 3rd round. Of course, Chelsea have a great history in the FA Cup as well. They'll be overwhelming favourites for that game. But if you were to lose that game, would it be the end of the world? I suspect not. The important thing is Chelsea have to be back in the Champions League next season. They have to improve on what they did this season. And if they can win a trophy along the way, then all well and good.